So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about that. How do we fix that problem? And we're going to run through some context for how we think about an ongoing needs of a website, measuring a website's health, what support looks like, more than maintenance. I'm going to hit that one, and that's a soapbox item for me. And then the idea of hospitality and how that fits into support, and then we'll do a short summary at the end. So I'm Mason. I have a company called Valet. We rebranded this year as Valet. We were previously WP Valet. I have two partners, Kim, who's our Chief of Operations, and James Tron, who's our Creative Director. And we do WordPress support. So we almost exclusively do WordPress support. We do some custom development, and I'll talk about that too. But our business is completely based around the month-to-month needs that clients have with their website. So when someone comes to us and they want something done, we'll assist with that, but we sign them up for a monthly recurring plan. They pay every month. We have sustainable income, and they have a full web team. There's 16 of us now that work full-time in the United States, and then we have 2 in Asia that help us work worldwide. And the pain is this. Customers who have websites run into issues with their site. Something breaks, something works, something doesn't work right? Like they've installed SEO plugins. The problem is they have one main contact point when that happens, maybe 2. The first thing they have is their hosting company, right? The one bill for sure that they're paying if they have a website is they're paying for hosting. So most frequently they'll go back to that host and they'll say, hey, my website, something's wrong with it, right? The other person they might have is their web developer, which is probably most of you here. How many of you here are web developers, WordPress developers, you build sites, something like that? Yeah, right? So if they've gone to their host and they've asked the question, because the host is the one they're paying for, and they didn't get a good answer, they're coming to you next, right? You built the site, now it's not working right, it's on you to fix it. And to be honest, for hosting companies, that's fair. Hosting is a huge industry, but hosting is really focused on hardware. So hosting companies are really, they're built computers that are hosting the actual software, but the customer's actual problem is probably a software or application problem. And so their hosting company is gonna say, sure, you're paying us a few dollars a month, but all we're doing is keeping that software running. We're not here to help you with your software. So now what do? They're gonna have to come back to a developer. And guess what? You probably don't have time to help them. Right? You've moved on to a new paid project, you have plenty of clients lined up, and so they have this one need, and maybe you'll try to come in and you're not gonna really charge them for it. This is a 10-minute fix, I'll just take care of it. Well, of course, then they're gonna have another 10-minute fix, and another 10-minute fix, and there's really no such thing as a 10-minute fix anyway. So the customers have this pain. They're stuck, and they don't know where to get support from. And there's another real threat here, and that's that all of us have jobs and are working in, and especially with WordPress, in the open source market, right? We're working on what I call the open web, open source technology. Well, customers don't have to choose that. They don't have to go with a WordPress site. In fact, there's several big companies right now, Facebook, Apple, and Google predominantly, they're actually saying like, well, this is how you should build a website, right? Google now has AMP, and if you code your website in a specific way, Google will actually make sure it loads faster, and its ranking gets a nice, cool little lightning symbol if it's done right. Facebook has instant articles now, and of course you can get a Facebook page. Apple has Apple News. And just this first article here, you can check it out on Mashable, is with one of the Facebook's director of product, and he actually says, maybe websites aren't gonna be a thing that'll be around very much longer. And if you think about it from a customer's perspective, maybe not. It'd be much easier to build a Facebook page, just to create one, and advertise my business or my product or whatever it is on Facebook, which is where all of my friends already are. And with a Facebook page, I'm not in charge of any of the things that go along with it. I don't have to worry about software updates. I don't have to worry about whether or not my site's up. I don't have to worry about the amount of traffic that I'm sending to it. So there are companies here, and these are billions and billions of dollars with engineers behind it to make sure all of those things are working right. And that's in direct opposition to the open web, to where I don't need to sign someone's terms of service. I don't need to hand over my information to them, which is what I do when I sign up on Facebook. I actually control the whole thing from start to finish. So there's a real threat to our jobs, to our ability to operate in open source, in that proprietary technology is pretty good, and it's advanced even so that it's, in a lot of cases, technology like Squarespace, it can be seen as easier to use than WordPress. And even Instagram now, this past week I saw they're launching tools for businesses. So for businesses, you can actually get insights into how well different posts that you've created, different images, are gaining traction and gaining engagement. So these guys are serious about getting folks to use their platforms. And as we see that increase, if we can't create compelling alternatives in the open source space, we're gonna be in trouble. So how do we solve it? Well, the simple solution that you hear all the time is maintenance plans. I think this is a terrible idea. A maintenance plan, just by default, the word maintenance has the idea of I'm gonna try to eke just a little more life out of something. So if I have something like my car, and it's wearing down, and at some point, my car is not gonna be drivable anymore, right? What do I do to keep the car running? I do some maintenance. I'll check the oil, I'll make sure there's brake fluid, I'll get the steering adjusted, maybe rotate the tires. That's maintenance work. But all that's doing is just trying to prolong the inevitable. At some point, that car is gonna be junk, and it's trash, and it's gone. That's fine for your car. That's fine. This guy here, I think, is repairing a dishwasher. So it's fine for a household appliance, maintenance, sure, because you've spent some money on it and you want it to just last as long as possible. It's completely inappropriate for a business. If this is your business, you don't want to maintain anything. You want to be pursuing growth. You want to see that your business is improving. And if your website is a key part of your business, you need to know that your website is improving. Not staying the same, not just hanging together, but actually taking steps forward and giving you a better return each month. So what I'm going to talk about today, we're kind of avoiding the word maintenance a little bit, although I understand why it's used. But let's talk about, if we want to compete with folks like Facebook and Apple and Google, how do we give customers the experience where they're seeing the same kind of improvements and as little stress as possible, the same way they would if they were on one of those platforms? So traditionally, and this is something hosting companies would do, we'd see these kind of solutions. How do we help if we're running a maintenance plan? We're going to do things like knowledge-based articles, wikis, videos, walkthroughs, those kinds of things. I've talked to the people who provide white label videos. I've talked to the people who provide walkthroughs. I've talked to people who have vast knowledge-based libraries. They don't work. People don't read them. Nobody's going to watch your videos. It doesn't work. The reason is that those kinds of things are meant to fill something it's reactive. If somebody's having a problem and I'm thinking about, as a user, something's broken on my site, I now want action done. If I knew what action to take, I would just do it. I don't know what to do. And at that point, when something's wrong, I'm probably going to be frustrated by a video that maybe sounds like it's sort of my problem, but it isn't specific to my site. So these tools are often too generic, they're very impersonal, they actually have very low engagement rates. And sometimes the success criteria isn't even defined. So we don't even really know, well, in a very typical scenario, someone writes in and they'll say, my website, it feels slow. Well, come on, man, your website feels slow. How do I fix that, right? It would be very difficult to answer that with a knowledge-based article or with a video, right? Because there's so many different things that could make a website slow, and just because you feel like it's slow, maybe it is or it isn't. So all of these things tend to not work out very well. And in addition, traditional maintenance services, they don't work out very well either because they're providing a few things: backups, security checks, software updates, and maybe some uptime monitoring. I'm not saying you don't need those things. You absolutely should have every single one of those for every single one of your sites. But they're not quite enough. Just having that isn't enough. Eventually, someone's going to go, why am I paying for backups and security checks and software updates and uptime monitoring? My site's fine, right? They just feel like their site is fine. Or they feel like a paid platform alternative, like a Facebook page, would be better. So if your goal is to set out with a maintenance plan that just provides these things and you think, I'm gonna be able to get 1,000 websites on this, I'm gonna kick back and relax, I haven't seen that to be the case. That's not what happens at Valet. Our solution is a little different. We think that first of all, customers need to be educated and they need to have a way to quantify what's wrong with their site. So that scenario a little bit ago where I said my site feels slow. Well, that's a hard question even to address. So we want to help them understand what are the actual scores for your site? How fast is it? And is that good or not? Right? Most customers have no idea how long it takes for the back end to render. They have no idea what the time to first byte is. They have no idea what fully loaded versus a page load or what speed index score is. They don't know any of those things, and they shouldn't have to know. If they were on Facebook, they wouldn't need to know. So if they're on WordPress, we don't want them to have to think about those things either. So the way we change that is we give them indications. We score things for them and say, hey, here's how you're doing. This is a score, and we're gonna compare it to how you were last month, and the month before, and the month before that. And we're also gonna help you decide what should your score be, right? Because you wanna be two things. If you're serious about business and you're serious about your website, you wanna be better than you were before, and you wanna be better than your competition. So we need to analyze not just your site, but your competitors' websites, right? If I tell you your score is a 63, you may not care. But if I tell you your score is a 63 and your competitors are a 73, well, now the goal is clear. It's to be a 74, it's to be a 75, it's to be better than our competition. So there's the two things that we look at. Customers need to be educated. They need to have a way that they can very quickly and easily see the performance of their site. And then they need to be able to understand whether and how that sits in context. So this is what we do. We give them ways to measure their website performance. We give them ways to visualize that. And I'll give you some examples in a second. And then because we're there, we're already giving you some authoritative information. In other words, this is specific to your site. This is not a generic wiki article. This is not a generic video. These are the real scores and how your site is performing. We are able to frame the conversation in a proactive way. So now when you have a question, it's no longer my site feels slow. It's my site's performing at 54, and it used to be performing at 74. What happened? And because we're recording this information actively, we can actually go back and check and see exactly when that score happened, and we can see what happened that made that change. If they updated their theme, and now there's 20 new HTML requests and 35 new JavaScript requests, yeah, that had an impact on your performance, and that was a theme update. So we can actually help the customers understand why their performance was suffering. So we've approached this as the idea of site health. And that we believe there are 5 key areas for site health. So if you look here, this is how we've defined them. Security, speed, usability, traffic, and conversion. We think all websites, regardless of what their point is, e-commerce or just a blogger, a membership site, any type of site, they all need those 5 things. And if they're going to be concerned about the performance of their site, it should be on all 5 of those areas. So we measure their site across those 5 areas, and then we create insights. If their score isn't good, we'll tell them why. We'll say, hey, here are some ways you can improve it. If your security score is bad because of malware, we've got to address that right away. You're making the internet worse. So let's fix that, right? If your site is slow, let's see what we can do to speed it up. So we'll actually give them insights for it. And then we'll also explain to them why it's so important. Why is this even important to you, right? Because the primary problem that a person has if they're having a support question is education. They don't know why this is important. They don't know what the action is they should do next. So we've actually broken these 5 key health metrics down into what we call a hierarchy of site health metrics. It's also just, if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of need, right? That's what we're pulling this from. We're saying that at each level, there's a level that you have to achieve to actuate before you can move on. So if I had a website and I was like, ugh, I'm not getting what I want out of my website. It's not converting well enough. I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna spend money on split testing to see what's going on with my conversion. Or I'm gonna run a Google AdWords campaign. I'm gonna get a whole bunch of ads so I can bring in tons of traffic to my website, get a whole new audience. That way I get more customers. Well, if your site's insecure and it's giving that warning that Chrome throws up that says, warning, something's wrong here, you wanna back up, you've wasted a lot of money on ads, right? If your site isn't usable, if it doesn't load well on a mobile device, and your users are mostly coming on a mobile device, you shouldn't be worried about conversion yet. Let's make the site responsive first. So this graphic for us, and we use this with our clients, helps educate them why certain things are important. Why should they set a speed budget? Why should that be an important part to them? Well, it should be important because Google tells you, if your page load is above 6 to 8 seconds, people are bouncing. They're not gonna stick around. So before we spend any money on traffic and conversion, we should spend money on speed. And I mentioned the idea of DNA, and you'll see that here off to the right. We use a two-prong approach. We analyze, that's what I've been talking about. We take a look, and we just run some assessments and see how is this website doing. And that's via our software, and we'll give it a score. The second step is to optimize it. We take a look at the scores. How can we make it better? How much better should this website be? We'll iterate on that, and then we'll go back and we'll analyze it again. So here's an example. So this is stuff from an actual tool that we'll be launching in August. And you can see right here, we're taking those 5 scores, we display it to them, and we also display it over time. So they can see their scores, not just what they are right now, but how it has been over time. And it's kind of hard to see on this thing here, but up or down. So they can see how it's trending. They can see, am I doing better or am I doing worse? If they need to, of course, they can ask questions and talk to us about it. And then they can fill in their own tasks. So if they have something else that they want done, of course, come on in and ask. But by framing it up that we have these 5 areas, and this is what's important to your site, we're getting ahead of the reactive sense of, oh no, something's wrong with my site, by saying, no, we know all the things about your site actually, right? And then the other side of it is hospitality. This is really big for us at Valet, and actually I think makes a huge difference in your ability to handle lots of customers. We like to think of our customers more as guests. We tend to think of Valet as almost like an Airbnb or a bed and breakfast. People are coming and they're staying with us for a while. We don't want them to have a really good time. We want to support them ahead of time. We want to anticipate and fulfill their needs before they've even said anything about it. And all of those things are sort of what we call Southern hospitality. We're treating them like we're their family. We're taking care of their website like it's our own website, like we would want someone to take care of our site. And when we have that attitude, we find that customers are much more grateful. They're happy to be there. They're really glad that we came up with these 5 things and we spotted a usability issue before they even did, and we actually addressed it for them. By doing those types of things, you're almost putting credits in the bank for yourself, because eventually there will be problems. There will be times where things get bad. But if you've built a lot of goodwill in there and a lot of trust and a lot of authority, then when they come in with a question, they have a different mindset and different attitude, and you're ready to handle that. Some specific things in that regard is just being friendly, using their name. We use emojis a lot. If you have to tell a customer bad news, but you can put some kind of emoji in there to know, like, I'm really sorry, or this is great, and a smiling face, it makes a difference. It actually really makes a difference in the way people respond to it. So don't ignore that part of the communication. The second thing, set up proper expectations. So if you're communicating back to someone, you see the word soon here and it's crossed out because no one in my company is allowed to use that word. It means nothing. If I say, oh, I'll get back to you soon, when am I getting back to you? You have no idea, right? And if somebody is in that place of support and they're like, my website is broken, this is mission critical to my business, and my website's down, and now you've told me you'll get back to me soon, what am I gonna do? Refresh, 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 refresh. Where are you? Refresh, refresh, right? But if I say, oh, yeah, this is an important issue, I'm gonna explain that I understand the issue, and I'm gonna take a look at this with a developer, I'll get back to you in an hour. Great, okay, now they know. I can sit and I can wait. Now you'd better respond in an hour, right, whenever you said it, but you've told them and you've set an expectation. This is when I'm gonna hear back. And even further, let's say it's not an urgent site down issue. They're saying, hey, you know what, this widget in the footer of our About page has the wrong information. I don't know what happened. Can you look into it? Sure, we're going to take a look at this. I'll have this fixed up for you. I'm sure we can take care of it. You'll have it fixed tomorrow by 10 a.m. Great. If that doesn't work for them, they can come back to you and say, wait, this is important. I need faster attention to that. But as long as you set a time frame for them, you've given them that expectation. You should also let them know if there's any actions that they require. So if you actually need them to take an action, tell them that right away. Hey, I see your site's down. I'm looking at it right away, and I'm going to get back to you within an hour. Here are some things you can do. That way they're not just sitting there, oh, what do I do for the next hour? But you've actually given them some things that could be helpful for you to diagnose the problem. Especially like, what if it's local to them, right? In your office, your network's down. Your website outside of your office is fine, right? That happens. So if you can give them things so they can check that out, you can head that off. One of my favorite phrases is unless I hear differently. Guys, this is the one to write down. Like, this is so amazing, has been so changing for our company. So if a customer writes in and they have a problem and you say, well, I think we can fix it. Here's what we ought to do. We ought to do X. Let me know if that's okay. And then you don't hear anything. And then you don't hear anything. And then as that happens more and more, you have like 800 tickets open and they're all just pending, waiting on your customers to respond, right? So unless I hear differently, puts the action back on their part. They have to say something. So an example would be, unless I hear differently, I'm going to restart your server at 6 p.m. tonight. And if I don't hear differently, that's what I'm going to do. Now, this puts a lot of power in your hands, but that's where you want it. If they don't respond to you, that's on them. They had the opportunity to. Within our organization, we say you have to be 85% sure. Just kind of, if you're 85% sure, go ahead and say, unless I hear differently. If you're not sure, if you're not 85% sure, go talk to somebody else on the team. And you guys decide. Together, can you come up with something that's 85% sure this is the right thing? If not, call in somebody else until you get there. And once you have a solution that you're really confident in, go ahead and let them know. So we actually use this internally as well. So even for my team, if I'm saying, well, I'm gonna make this change, and they don't let me apply code to our own website very often anymore. But if I think I really ought to make a change on the website and I'm gonna deploy it, and I haven't heard back, I'll use that with my own team. Unless I hear differently, I'm deploying this sucker tonight. And we may all be up for several days unwinding this. So this phrase is really valuable, and it is important to use it with a certain confidence level, but it makes a difference. And then you always want to make sure that you key in on what's actually most valuable to the customer. So a lot of times customers will send a support question, and it sounds like they're saying, I would like to get to the moon and have it be made out of Mars candy bars. And you're going, no, that's not a thing. You can't have that. That doesn't make any sense. So a part of what our job is to understand the customer and what they're actually asking for. So reading between the lines a little bit and understanding, okay, this is what's most valuable to them, and as you get to know a client better, you learn what is most valuable, you can pick up on that and say, okay, I know they really care about the way the logo is displayed in the top left. So whatever they've just said, I know that's important to them. I'm gonna make sure they understand we're gonna get this right for you. And we do this month after month after month after month. We have this value cycle. Right here is where we score it. Every customer that comes into the valet, the first thing that we do is an assessment. And we run your site through everything towards what their monthly plan is gonna cost them. And as much as we can, we try to factor that in up front. So sometimes it's significant, and if that's what it takes, we try not to fire clients, not to ever tell a client, no, go away, goodbye. But sometimes we will price it where it's just doesn't make sense for them anymore. So, yeah. Good?
That's good.
Yep. Thank you guys very much.